They say you never really see a relationship breaking until it's already in pieces. For years, I believed I was in a happy marriage. We smiled for photos, hosted dinners, and gave advice to other couples. But behind those smiles, something inside me was quietly falling apart. I used to wake up early, make his favorite breakfast, and wait for a simple thank you. He rarely said it. Instead, he'd grab his coffee, scroll through his phone, and leave without a glance. It wasn't abuse in the loud, visible way people imagine. It was a quiet kind, the kind that slowly erases you without leaving a mark. There was a morning I'll never forget. He came into the kitchen, looking annoyed. I asked if something was wrong. He said, "You always ask that. Can't you just be quiet for once?" I stood there, holding his coffee, realizing that I'd stopped being his partner long ago. I had become part of the background. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently so our kids wouldn't hear. And in that small space, I asked myself a question I'd avoided for years. When did I stop feeling loved? I tried everything after that: therapy, date nights, kind gestures, long talks. But nothing changed. He said he was just tired, just busy, just stressed. I learned that love isn't supposed to make you question your worth. It's not supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. One evening, I came home and heard him laughing in the living room. Not with me, on the phone. That laughter was warm, genuine, alive. I hadn't heard that sound directed at me in years. I didn't need to ask who he was talking to. My heart already knew. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I quietly packed a small suitcase and went to my sister's house. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without pretending. I slept without fear. When people ask why I divorced him, I don't say, because he cheated. That's not the full truth. I left because I realized I'd been cheating on myself. Every time I smiled to keep the peace, stayed silent to avoid conflict, or accepted less than I deserved, I had betrayed myself more than he ever did. Now, years later, I'm learning how to love again. Not someone else, but myself. The woman who survived. The woman who finally said, "Enough." Sometimes, divorce isn't failure. It's freedom. It's the moment you decide that peace matters more than appearances. And that's the truth many women are finally brave enough to tell. I never thought I'd say out loud, but there came a day when I realized I wasn't married to a man. I was raising one. When we first got together, he was charming, funny, full of energy. He made me laugh in ways no one else could. But slowly, the excitement faded and responsibility took its place. Or at least it was supposed to. Except I was the only one who seemed to notice. Bills? My problem. Groceries? My job. House chores? My duty. His only contribution was showing up at the dinner table and complaining if something wasn't perfect. At first, I told myself it was temporary. He just needed time to figure things out. But time turned into years, and figuring things out turned into endless excuses. He'd stay up late playing games, sleep half the day, and call me nagging when I asked for help. One day, I came home from work, exhausted after a 10-hour shift. The sink was full of dirty dishes, the floor covered in his clothes, and he was lying on the couch scrolling through his phone. I stood there, holding my purse, looking at the mess around me, and something inside me broke quietly, not with anger, but with realization. I was tired, not just physically, but so deep tired. Tired of being the only adult in the house. Tired of managing everything while being blamed for not doing enough. That night, I didn't yell or argue. I simply said, "I can't live like this anymore." He laughed and said, "You're overreacting. Every couple fights about chores." But this wasn't about chores. It was about respect, responsibility, partnership. He always said he loved me, but love without effort is just a word. I didn't want a man who said he loved me. I wanted one who showed it, who understood that love isn't just romance. It's teamwork. It's washing dishes when the other person is tired. It's remembering to ask how their day went. It's showing up even in small ways. Weeks later, I realized something else. I had been mothering him, not partnering with him. I reminded him to pay bills. I picked up after him. I even made his appointments. And the worst part? He was perfectly fine with it. That realization hurt more than anything. Because I didn't want to be someone's mother. I wanted to be someone's equal. The day I left wasn't dramatic. There were no tears, no shouting. I packed my clothes, wrote a short note, and walked away from the version of love that kept me small. He called, of course, said he'd change, that he didn't realize how much I did. But by then it was too late. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I finally started loving myself. I wanted peace, partnership, and balance, not a relationship that felt like parenting. Now, I live alone in a small apartment. It's quiet, sometimes lonely, but it's peaceful. There are no dirty dishes unless I leave them there. No raised voices, no silent resentment. Just me, learning, healing, growing, and realizing that being alone is not the worst thing in the world. Being with the wrong person is. People ask if I'd ever go back. No, because I've learned something powerful. You can't build a future with someone who refuses to grow up. And you can't keep fixing someone who doesn't want to change. I wasn't his mother. I was his wife. And when he forgot the difference, I remembered who I was, and I walked away. I used to think a perfect marriage meant keeping everything together, no matter how broken it felt inside. From the outside, our life looked flawless. A beautiful house, polite children, social media smiles, and anniversary posts that fooled even me sometimes. But behind those filtered moments was a silence I couldn't ignore anymore. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't unfaithful. He was just absent. Physically there, emotionally gone. We'd sit at the same dinner table and feel like strangers sharing space, not a life. I remember one evening vividly. We were sitting on the couch, the TV playing softly, and I turned to him and asked, "Are you happy?" He looked confused for a second, then said, "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" I wanted to say, because we barely talk anymore, because we live in the same house but walk in different worlds. But instead, I just smiled and nodded, the same way I always did. That night, when he fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling and realized I'd been holding my breath for years. Try to keep everything perfect. Perfect wife, perfect mom, perfect home. But the cost of that perfection was my peace. I woke up the next morning, made breakfast as usual, packed the kids' lunches, and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes looked tired. My smile felt heavy. And I whispered to myself, "You don't have to keep pretending." It took months to gather the courage. Divorce isn't an impulsive decision. It's 1,000 quiet moments that build into one final truth. You can't fix what refuses to heal. When I finally told him I wanted to leave, he didn't yell. He just stared at me and said, "You really want to ruin this perfect life?" That's when I realized we never wanted the same thing. He wanted perfect. I wanted peace. Leaving wasn't easy. I cried in parking lots, missed the smell of our home, and questioned myself more times than I can count. But slowly, something began to shift. I started sleeping better. I started laughing again, not forced laughter, but real, deep, uncontrollable laughter. I began to remember who I was before I spent years trying to please everyone else. People often say divorce breaks you. Maybe it does at first. But it also rebuilds you, piece by piece, stronger, clearer, freer. Now, when I walk into my small apartment, there's no tension waiting at the door. No need to tiptoe around someone's moods. No pressure to perform happiness. Just peace. Quiet, gentle, honest peace. And I've learned something important. Peace will never look perfect. It's messy, it's uncertain, it's raw. But it's real. And I'd rather have real peace than fake perfection any day. Sometimes love ends not with anger, but with understanding. You realize that staying no longer means strength. It means surrendering your soul. So you choose to walk away. Not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started listening to yourself. And that's what I did. I chose peace. And in doing so, I found myself again.